Yes, we're on air.
How you doing, Zeitgeisters? This is Craig, Chris, and Sonny. And we're here today to do episode 6 of the TZM podcast. We're going to talk today about capitalism and can it save us? Is there a way or a mechanism inside capitalism or inside the structures that capitalism propagates to actually get us out of the potentially impending social and economic and environmental crises? We're going to use a case study. We're going to look at, or theoretically, we're going to look at Tesla Motors and the Tesla power battery. We're going to try and discuss things from that point of view philosophically and see if we can come to some sort of conclusion about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. A lot of people obviously are hailing Elon Musk and Tesla as this amazing company. He's doing electric cars. He's doing get you off the grid power at home, the power walls, lots of cool stuff. But what's really happening here? Is it just another marketing ploy? Is it going to end up eating itself as well? We'll go from there. I'll launch in with Chris.
Well, I'm just going to say no. And that's it. See you all next week. No. No, I think what Tesla's doing is a great thing, but I think it's a tip of the iceberg. I think it's a bit of a marketing thing, because at the end of the day, he's there to sell a product, he's there to make a profit, but his intentions are good when he released his patents to the general public, because that's going to push battery technology forward. Because the biggest thing that's held back electric cars over the 100 so years has been the batteries, and through mobile phones, be getting big, working harder, requiring more power, and to last longer. I think the battery technology is being pushed to its limits in that way, and same as with the tablets and the rest of it. And I think he's picked up on that technology and he's moved it forward into his cars.
I'm kind of busy here trying to post all of this stuff on the social media, but first of all, I'd say there is a set of rules for capitalism by which money gets invested. And the set of rules is that money searches the highest rate of return, and the highest rate of return is tied in by the definition of corporation, which is to maximize profit. Meaning that if there are two factories, two entrepreneurs, one wanting to make his product in China, using the lowest possible margins, making it more quickly, he's more likely to attract money and investors than some guy trying to do it in Detroit. Because he'd have to pay, a lot more to his workers and so on and so on.
Not just wages, but environmental, like as in dumping his waste products.
So what's kind of unique with Tesla and Elon Musk is that, he's entering a market that, you make a car, and they have something like 5-year bumper-to-bumper warranty, meaning that anything ever goes wrong for whatever reason, it's not limited in any sense. They repair it for free, and 8 years drivetrain and battery warranty. So, this is sort of unprecedented in the auto industry. The car is virtually, good for life. They recharge those cars for free. It's a terrible business model if you're making money. And how does Tesla do it? Well, first of all, the part that's missing from the equation, and why there's only one Elon Musk, is that Elon Musk made about $500 million in cash from PayPal and the previous 4 companies he's had. So nobody, by the rule of it, will invest in a company that manufactures, in a Western country, a product which is not optimized to make money. It had to be this very charming, genius, charismatic character putting in all of his life, save his entire net worth into 2 companies at the time, later 3, Tesla, SpaceX, and Solar City. So it had to be somebody literally risking everything they've ever earned, $500 million plus, in enlightened projects for some more venture capital money to find its way into those projects. And generally speaking, the market that's searching for things to invest in is very rarely, if ever, finding the target like Tesla, for example. And as such, it's an exception. It's a very much an exception to the rule. And I'd say, if the average multi-billionaire, wanted to tackle major global problems, like Elon Musk did. Hey, we're stagnating in the whole notion of going to outer space. NASA's hardly made any progress in 20 years. I want to get into the business of launching stuff into space cheaper than NASA can do it. Electric cars. Oh my God, we had the EV3. Like, why has there been virtually no progress for 10, 15 years? This could change the world. This could save the world. I want to be the guy that does it. Like, very few of the people that are, entrepreneurs and billionaires are going down these avenues. And quite frankly, if Elon Musk, if the kind of culture where you have venture capitalists funding entrepreneurs and a kind of culture where you have companies, major corporations hiring CEOs, if that culture had an interest in hiring people, that have some integrity and some stake in benefiting the world, sure, capitalism could save us. But that's not who they hire. That's why there's only one Elon Musk. They hire people to maximize profits. And you don't maximize profits by making cars that don't break down. You don't maximize profits by, providing, offering more services for less money, because you basically maximize profits by getting the people to spend the most amount of money.
But maybe he's brand building.
That is a valid concern. I don't know. Craig, what do you think?
Well, I've got to ask a question there. So let's have a think about what you said. I think, well, we're looking at him as this outlier in a field of people in dark rooms making lots of money and smoking cigars. He's the outlier in this. In your idea, if I've heard that. So he's got a social conscience and he wants to make money by solving the world's problems. I think that's based on potentially false assumptions. The first false assumption being that he's enlightened. He probably is, and he sees the point, and maybe it's a marketing scheme, but he's a self-interested dude. He's trying to make money, and where he's potentially being different is he's realised that there is a market out there for enlightened ideas, like electric cars and like getting off the grid. Because people right now are feeling the pinch of petrol, people are feeling the pinch of petrol bills, people are feeling the pinch of increasing bills at home, a couple hundred per month, 400 or 500 per month. So they're going, how do I do this? How do I get out of this system? So he's designed a system which allows you to do that in a really unique way.
So are you basically saying that he's an entrepreneur who's realized there's a market for enlightened ideas, and I'm going to fill that market for enlightened ideas and charge a premium for my product because it comes attached with enlightened ideas? I mean, is that what you think, or is that the idea, the possibility you're floating? At this
the possibility. I don't know. I'll reserve my judgment till the end of the conversation. But the premise here is that potentially he's not that different. He's just seen a new market. Now, whether or not, the question becomes is why wasn't the market seen before? Again, we had the EV1 in 1998 that had a faster pickup than a Porsche. It was great. Holden rolled it out. They leased it and pulled it back. There's a good doco called Who Killed the Electric Car? And it's worth watching, I think, because there was obviously other interests involved. The problem potentially Elon's going to have is that, and my guess is, because he's a smart dude, he's thought about this anyway, after releasing the patents, there's nothing stopping a Chinese company from producing his car a lot cheaper and then selling it. So why isn't that happening? Why aren't we seeing that? I don't think the Chinese have a problem rolling out mass production very quickly and changing production lines to suit. So is it too soon for that to come about? Has he got some
question.
sort of...
I can speculate.
No.
Has he got some sort of lock
I
on?
can jump in there because
Please.
I think the only patents that he's released is not on the car itself.
No, all of them are on the car. He's released all the car-related patents.
I think 90% of it's on the battery technology because he wants to push
And
the
most
battery
of the
technology
stuff,
forward.
Yeah.
Anyone can build a car. There's no issues there. It's the technology in the batteries is what
That's what's legitimately new. Yes. Because the car, look, the electric motor, you have it in every washing machine. By the weight of the motor compared to the output of power, they are a lot more powerful than petrol engines and a lot more efficient. So there's not the only novel thing about a Tesla really is the battery. There's a lot of kind of side innovation. The doors open and the car's got sensors and it can self-navigate and da-da-da-da-da. But the thing that makes a difference is the batteries. And I think he's released it for several reasons. One of which is, in a way, it protects his company Because, once the technology is out there, there's no point suppressing Tesla or making Tesla crash. When the very next thing coming down the road is a Chinese knockoff, and once the genie's out of the bottle, it's out of the bottle. Technology has been historically suppressed, and you already know in this case that we're way past the point where that can happen.
Well, it's important to note that Nissan have the Leaf and Holden have the Volt, and I've seen them driving. So we've already got 2 mass production car companies doing electric cars.
I would also say the margin on these cars is relatively thin. And he knows that...
is it?
Yeah.
Why is that? Because the battery's so expensive? Or?
Yeah, look, I mean, you can think about... I would say, yeah, for the most part, it is because the batteries are so expensive. The batteries are the thing that make these cars...
Do you actually know that?
Yes. The batteries themselves use a fortune in terms of rare metals. And Tesla recycle all their batteries. And so there's an argument to be made that they use rare resources and they're not necessarily sustainable. But then again, they recycle virtually 100% of those.
Well, that was the next question. Where is he getting the resources from, and is that sustainable? Can everyone, even with current recycling technology and in recycling 100%, can everyone have an electric car?
That's fantastic. Look, there is I'm going to Google that while we discuss other things, but I know for a fact that yes, batteries and funnily enough, touchscreens are 2 things that we're using a fuck ton of in the world we have today, and generally not recycling, that come from expensive and resource limited materials. So I'll tell you which they're both called rare earth metals, and I can Google and specifically tell you which ones.
Because it's quite fascinating. Because if you think about what that means that there's only a limited lifespan for this market, and for the idea that this can save the world. That idea only has a certain amount of credence if he derives the metal from somewhere, and he's not taking new metal out of the ground. But if that's the case, then he's limited to the current amount of metals in circulation, so those metals will become more and more precious as he has less access to them, thereby driving the price high potentially of the product.
Yeah, but also he's working on one type of battery technology and chemistry where we've seen in the last couple of years that there's a lot of organisations like JPL and MIT that are working on battery technologies that use the soil in your backyard, taking the most abundant resource and using that to a point where we're trying to get the same efficiencies out of it, and then once its end life comes in, it's non-toxic, goes back into the earth. We have that with a saltwater battery right now, which can power a house, same thing, and it has a rating of 6. In other words, when it's finished in the end of its lifespan, it can practically be chopped up. You can almost drink it. It's non-toxic whatsoever. So there are plenty of other people moving forward with technology that to use metals and minerals that are abundant.
Well, that's interesting in itself. I mean, the way I could see it working, but obviously this is from a non-engineering technical point of view. Has anyone heard about the solar-powered roads?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've looked into...
Can we talk about that? Is that...
Yeah, I've looked into solar roads quite a bit, and it's a fantastic concept. I shared it on my Facebook happily.
But the price?
But the numbers on them don't crunch. I mean, it's similar to the numbers in the Tesla Powerwall. Powerwall is at least like... Given the lifetime of the batteries and the guarantees on Tesla in a country like Australia, where power is expensive, you will pay it back in about 10 years. In most countries, there's no point buying it, so it's not even economically viable. Solar roads are way worse than the Tesla Powerwall. So Tesla Powerwall is basically a concept that I think should be in every single house in 10 years. As the technology improves, as it gets cheaper, it's going to be viable. I think Tesla Powerwall can change the world. It's not there yet.
Do we feed it off like solar panels?
It's just a giant battery. That's all.
It's a giant battery that feeds off solar panels on the roof.
Okay. Yeah, but it's plug and play. It's not complicated. It's up on the wall. You plug it into your existing home setup network, and away it goes.
Which is the benefit of it. It's adaptable to the current structures.
Yeah. So the trouble with the solar roads is that the price that they cost, from just in economic terms, the price that they cost and the amount of power that they produce for the price that you pay for the solar roads, they're just not economically viable.
Well, not when you're pouring bitumen, which is a byproduct of the oil industry. So, well, I mean, we pour bitumen now on our roads, and that's the cheapest form of building a road.
No, but hang on a sec. So, but we kind of missed the point there, because what we did was we jumped straight back into economics and justifications economically for...
We have to. This is a capitalist thing.
Well, let's talk about... So let's hypothesize for a minute. So if we all agree... Well, that's a loaded term, and I'll wait for your response on that one, gents. But if we all agree that capitalism can't save us long term, that it's not actually going to fix the problems because of limited resources, because of self-interest. But the funny thing is, I'll come back to another point about Tesla in a minute, but let's just assume for a minute that economics wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
Would we be pouring solar roads?
Great question. I mean,
Because
it would be a different equation. There's a simple
if the
answer to
resources
that.
are there and it produces power to get more resources and use them more efficiently and power our societies, does that mean we would be powering solar roads?
There's a lot of trouble with it, right?
Why is that?
Because our energy consumption is the highest when the sun's setting, for example. And if the roads are by default flat, right? So when the light hits them at an angle of a setting sun, they pretty much stop working by 3-4 p.m. and our highest consumption is 7-8 p.m.
Yeah, but you do have to use
roads,
batteries still. Yeah.
Solar roads themselves, for one, are kind of contingent on batteries. For two, the way I've looked at and how they would be structured, we still don't know if they would pass the energy equation test. So never mind the fact that they're not economically viable. They may not even be energy viable. Like, you would spend more energy into them than they would produce in 10, 15 years. So I'm speculating on this front. I could well be wrong. But yes, if we're not looking at economics as a metric, you would have to look at projects like this one from the point of view of how much energy does it take to produce them, what sort of rare resources do they require, and is it worth it for the amount of energy they will produce back.
Because the funny thing is, I think that eventually the technology will be there to derive power directly from multiple sources in one area without needing batteries. So, for example, if you looked at an area and you took an area like St Kilda or Cheltenham, something near the water, you might have a combination of solar and tidal and wave power. And I saw an amazing thing on a recent wave installation which looked really interesting. But they talked about the idea that this is kind of really economical now compared to even just ripping coal out of the ground and burning it. So you have to localise. I don't think you can run things out en masse completely to start with. You have to kind of put into the grid, and then things have to come out of the grid. So there's an idea that says if you have one particular area that was particularly abundant in power, and like I talks about this, Joseph talked about this in the third movie. He says, let's look at the wave potential, let's look at tide potential, let's look at solar potential, let's look at all these things before we decide we can build anything anywhere. Then you'd have a different discussion. And the discussion might be that in the end, with especially things like tidal, wave and geothermal, you wouldn't need sun. There wouldn't even need to be batteries because you just feed the power directly into the grid. And you might have to a point where you have to burn it off because you've got too much.
Yeah, but the other thing too is what you look at here is it doesn't take a lot of mass to figure out that if you put a wind generator up in the right spot, how much wind blows past that point. You build it with the best materials you can get. You want to build it for longevity. You don't want to be looking at maintenance side of it. So you're gonna push the boundaries of engineering that way. So this thing will run continuous for 20 years without even touching it. Of course, that's going to beat coal. I mean, it can't not beat coal.
Well, the interesting question for me then there is, and look, just to go back to that article I talked about, these guys are talking about tidal power. So they use like an existing dam structure with two sides of water, and they let water into a middle section, and then let it out into the big section, and there's a turbine at the bottom. So it just drains, and that drives the turbine, and then when it finishes draining, it goes the other way.
How does that work? With
gravity just pushes the water down through the turbine.
How can it push it
and out to the bottom? Well, the water actually just goes into the second section.
Yes.
And then when that finishes draining, when the middle section finishes draining, they open the top of that up, so that fills up, and then they let this turbine out. And so it's basically just water exchange through a series of turbines.
Just displacing water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Using tides and waves.
Well, in Japan, they store some of their kinetic energy in the top of a volcano, like a dam structure, and then when you need peak load, you open up the valve, out comes the water, salt water, out comes the salt water. So like a hydro setup, instant power on demand. So, and I think that runs at about 80% efficient. Yeah, as far as even when it comes down to pumping at night time, and then dumping it during the day.
Well, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. But to focus back on Tesla for a minute, with those technologies potentially out there or in place, is Tesla just the end throes of a game that's coming to a close? So what we're talking about with Tesla is still finite resources, is still rare earth metals, is still battery power and storage. He's actually
trying to use less rare earth metals. I've just read So basically, they have two types of motors that they use. AC induction motors don't require magnets. Magnets are the main things where in electric devices rare earth metals go. Apparently in the Model S they didn't even use them in the batteries. But usually, for any large battery, any large car battery, like there was about 1.5 kilos in the Prius batteries, and they're rare. So 1.5 kilos is very, it's extremely precious. And batteries are essentially immersed in very reactive chemical compounds and hard to recycle. So you could just imagine putting a pile of gold inside acid in very thin form. It'd be very hard to retrieve, and that was the trouble with Prius. Now, Tesla Model S doesn't even use them in the motor or the battery, so there's some very promising things. I don't know what they use as an alternative. I don't know what the sort of chemical reagents inside the batteries are.
We need to find that out. But the question still remains, is Tesla going to be the solution, or the start of a solution, or is it still using limited resources and chemicals we don't have access to?
Can I just throw in a couple of things for Tesla? In a way, it's a terrible example, for capitalism, because for one, it goes against a lot of notions of maximizing profit. The car, for what it is, most reasons that people buy it is because people like to be early adopters of new technology. So it's not that the car is economically viable for anybody. It's not that it's it's simply the new frontier, and people want to have it. So there's that, and then people want to be seen as environmentally conscientious, and so they're basically banking on two kind of social trends that we have a small number of very rich people in the world who like to be seen as environmentally friendly, and who like to show off among their friends and be early adopters of new technology, and that's why Tesla is a market. But you
got to also understand that he's building a limited production line, right? So the cars are going to be expensive, just like if you were to build, say, a Corvette, right? They're limited production run cars, and Corvette's being built by GM. GM has certain lines that they're mass-produced cars. They can smash out a 4-cylinder whatever, little coupe. They know they're going to sell thousands and thousands of them. Yet they set up special lines, smaller lines, which are more hands-on to build those cars. But Tesla, what he's building, his battery plant, I don't know about his car plant, but his battery plant is huge. The new one he's building. Yeah. That by going big, he's going to be able to keep the price down. Yeah. And he's building in America, which I find really odd, because the price of wages. But he must be going all out on automation.
Oh yeah.
To build these batteries.
That's really high in automation. I mean, it's like they did a tour of one of the factories, right? Factory floor. It's a massive. They're putting out several hundred cars a day.
Yeah, there's 50 people. That's only low production.
That's 50 people. There's 50 people in the whole factory. That's the factory I worked in and made pumps. We employed more than.
All right. Well, hang on a sec. So let's seize on that point for a minute. So, if this is the way mass production is going, even if it's green, are people going to have the money to buy it?
That's no.
Well, let's go back to Henry Ford.
Yeah, because Henry Ford talked about the idea. He was one of a unique set of capitalists people talk about. If you look at him in one way, he said
he got beaten down.
He did, but he said originally or earlier in the piece, he said he wants the guys on the factory line to be able to afford the cars they're making.
That's right.
That's not happening at Tesla. Clearly, if the cars cost 150 grand and 50 people are working in the factory,
very
no
few
jobs
people.
there.
Very few people can afford Tesla cars on the basis of working for Tesla. Although the people that work for Tesla probably can. They also have a reputation for working their engineers extremely hard, which, again, is that really immoral or anything? I would say, it comes kind of with the territory of Silicon Valley frontier breaking startups, right? The trouble is, these engineers, I very much doubt they have any significant amount of Tesla stock. So if you're working hard for Elon Musk's dream of providing this to the world, you're probably putting in, a lot is there in Tesla. A lot of guys working for Tesla are doing in 50% of extra effort for probably 30% less wages in order to make, these wonderful dreams come
but
true.
down the track they'll get picked.
They probably will. And again, a lot of the reason why this has been successful is because so much goodwill exists that is an exception to the rule. Like, if you decided to make toilet paper, nobody would give a shit. Nobody would come in and work more hours for less money to make your toilet paper. The consumers, what I'm saying is that Tesla, as far as the market is concerned, is anomalous in so many ways that to take Tesla as an example of why capitalism can save us is a very, very weak line of reasoning.
Well, the interesting thing is, I'm going to pull 2 points out of that, if I may. The first point is that Elon Musk operates on this set of goodwill, social conscience stuff.
Yeah.
I was talking with a friend of mine who runs projects primarily in the not-for-profit sector. In fact, she's looking at doing stuff with metal drums and electronics and recycling, and how to kind of pull money out of that and how to get that hot so we can charge more for it so we can become a viable business. We both agreed that there's something about working in a non-for-profit sector that gives you a sense of self and gives you a sense of if you can imagine kind of goodwill points, or it gives you a sense of putting in with more than just self-interest of the paycheck at the end of the week. But this is where nurses, teachers, youth workers, non-for-profit people get paid less, because they're expected, by reasoning of their job and the fact that they are working in the service industry for other people, that you get something more than money out of your job, don't you? Therefore, we can't pay you as much money. Now, whether that's okay or not,
sick. That is just so sick. You're actually helping the world, so we'll pay you less because the fact that you're helping the world.
Because you're getting something out of it, Superman.
Yeah, you get to feel good about that.
But hang on a second.
You're putting a monetary value on happiness in your job.
Yeah.
No, but hang on a second. My reasoning wasn't that the world does that. My reasoning was the market does that. What the market says is that people who are drawn to this job are going to find more value in what they do rather than the paycheck at the end of the week. And so people are going to be drawn to this job because they want to help other people, not because they want to be a graphic designer and earn $1 million or run a business. So it's not that someone imposes a mandatory minimum on it. It's just that no one pays for this service more than the minimum, and people are attracted to it anyway because of its social value. So this is your argument about Elon Musk's engineers and people who work at Tesla as being anomalous, or potentially not anomalous. They're more like the idea that I'm not in it for my own interest. I'm in this because I'm part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to wear less of a financial remuneration.
Let's look on the other side of this coin.
Sure.
It's
As a plumber,
unblocking
a man's toilet.
Are you a plumber, Chris?
No, I'm not a plumber. But as a plumber, unblocking a person's toilet, right? There's no gratification in that whatsoever. There's no love or doing the right thing for the people. Is that why we charge an absolute fortune to do so?
No, we charge a fortune for that because it's very dirty work and no one wants to do it, except plumbers. I'm not saying no one wants to do it. I'm saying the idea that there is a certain amount of dirty a certain amount of grossity, if not a word, that has to come along with that role. So whenever there's something involved in a job that is outside of the normal self-interest, go to your job, take your paycheck home, switch off at the end of the day, whenever there's an extra amount of blood, guts, gore, whatever involved, but it's a private style setup like a plumber, you're going to charge more money for it. On the other side of coins, we see the same thing with nurses who have to deal with patients' blood, guts, gore and shit.
Yes.
And they don't get paid more, but that's because they have that sense of putting back in. The plumber doesn't get the same feeling, and people aren't drawn to plumber roles for the same thing. No one gets into being a plumber and goes, yep, I'm looking forward to unplugging
saving
those
the
drains.
world, baby.
Saving the world one drain at a
Just
time.
put it this way, from the point of view of the people paying the bills. Hey, motherfucker, listen, I know you design drivetrains for cars. Look, I know the average wage for you is $100K, right? But you get to help the world here. So we'll pay 70, right? What the fuck? Shouldn't, by any kind of logical, the people that make the most positive impact on society, right? This is what capitalism argues. This is what's written in all the books. This is the founding principle of all Ayn Rand novels. People that make the biggest contribution to the world get the biggest monetary gain. And all I'm saying is, for better or worse, we have an easy, clear demonstration with Tesla, with the non-profit sector, that this is not true. The opposite of this is true. People that make the biggest possible contribution to the world are generally paid less because people want to contribute and other people exploit this desire of everybody else to contribute and get to pay them less.
Yes, but there's something else going on with Tesla.
This is not the only thing going on with Tesla, but it's...
But in that idea, I'd love to see the stats that say he pays less, by the way, or works these guys hard, but...
No, I think he pays industry averages. But the average hours worked at Tesla for engineers are way high.
Quite high, yeah.
Starting to sound like 7-Eleven.
No. So the interesting thing is that I think there's something around the idea that obviously you also want to be an employer of choice or an employer with cred. So when you say you're an engineer at Tesla, people will stand up and take notice. If you say you're an engineer at
Bob's
J&J Auto Hubs,
Hyundai, like, yeah.
Exactly right. So Tesla has found a unique space in the capitalist structure by its branding and marketing, by that goodwill. So it's utilising that goodwill and those social values that it's saving the world in multiple ways for multiple things. Perhaps not overtly. I'm not saying this was by design, but that's what's actually happened. So people who go to work for him now will probably take less or work longer hours because they believe in the cause.
I personally think it's a business model.
Well, the interesting part of it, again, I agree with that, but the interesting part about that is what will happen, two things. When someone ramps up a factory big enough in China to churn them out at a faster pace for cheaper money, and two, what his shareholders think when that happens. So
he might be buying out his shareholders.
Any publicly traded company, potentially, any publicly traded company has a duty to maximise profit. If at some point the people who own those shares in that company, if he doesn't own the bulk of the shares, if he doesn't own the bulk of the shares and people in that system want to question him on what he's doing in terms of releasing the patents, then someone could take over. There could be a movement against him. Like this is
what happened to Steve Jobs.
Exactly, it's the dice you roll when you kind of publicly list your company. So what's the key there? So how does this play out, and what's keeping him in his role if it's not sustainable? Now, he either knows something we don't, he has access to something we don't, or there's something else going on.
May I just say this?
Yeah.
Tesla has benefited from the kind of global notion of turning brands into religions. I mean, the way Mac has. Elon Musk is a rock star. People buy cars because of Elon Musk. If the shareholders at Tesla kicked Elon Musk out today, there would be a revolt in the users. The share price would go even further down. Like, the whole company is built on these principles of environmental benefit to the world and goodwill and trailblazing and so on and so on.
Yeah, but Sonny, who's his shareholders? Is his shareholders are just the same shareholders of every other company?
Again,
just
there
after
would be
profit?
different people. There would be different
Come and
types
go?
of people. Because if you're going to buy shares in Tesla, I'd say part of the people, a part of the shareholders, part of the people buying the shares in Tesla are people going, yeah, man, Tesla's changing the world. And I got hundreds of millions anyway, so fuck it. Tesla's changing the world. I'm going to buy a Tesla. I'm going to own Tesla shares, and, we're going to
I disagree.
Save the world from global warming.
No, I don't think I'm on board with that. Like, I think people buy shares because they see value in the company.
Profit.
Exactly.
It's
like
profit motivated.
Like, if you had $100,000 and you were going to buy his $209 shares or whatever it is, you want to know that when you invested $100,000, you're going to get a return. You're not going to throw it away just because it feels good.
If you had a backyard billy cart, electric, and you had 5-cent shares, Sonny, I think you would generally get your average population going, yeah, I can see him going with this, like crowdfunding, right? Small amounts of money to push an idea forward. But when you're talking about a huge company like that, they're becoming bigger and bigger. At 200 and whatever it is a share, you're looking at major investors, and they're only looking for profit. They're not looking for anything else. And they jump in, and they jump out quick. They move around. And as we saw before when we looked up their share price, the volatility in their shares, you can see they're jumping in when he's making announcements, and it's coming up, and then they're bailing back out again when things level out.
Yeah. No, you're right, absolutely right. I mean, Elon Musk himself said he doesn't look at the Tesla share price ever. He's like, I don't know what it is. I try not to even pay attention to it.
Oh, shit.
He's actually said that. He's actually said that.
What, does he never looks at how much money he's got in the bank at any particular time when he's buying new tech?
I don't think I believe that either.
The idea being
because it buys more into it's more of his image.
Yeah.
Like, I don't look at that. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to save the world. Don't you get it? Buy my shit. Save the world.
That's it.
Come on, Sonny. Buy a Tesla.
Come on, man. Who goes and buys?
Like,
who goes and builds a billions of dollar factory and go, I don't care what the share price says. I'm just gonna build it.
He has to. The funny thing is, he has to care what the share price says, because if he doesn't and someone takes him over, he can't do shit.
Well, but the question ultimately is, how many of the Tesla shares are out floating in the market? Because if Elon himself is holding on to, say, 35%, and he's got a few trusted friends that can on a whim buy the remaining to get him to 51, like, if he could be in a position to take over.
That's insider trading.
Sorry?
That's insider trading. Are you accusing Elon Musk of insider trading?
No, I'm just saying. How
do we know he has already got 51%? So he makes sure no one pushes him out.
Yeah, maybe he does.
Most people who float their companies on the market always take 51.
Probably the good way to go. But alright, so coming back to what we're talking about, do we think Tesla and companies like it, if we see any more that come up through the ranks, can they save the world or save us from capitalism?
I'll tell you what'll save us from capitalism. Open source technology.
So
he's done that.
Elon owns 27%. So there you go. At the start of the year, he has declared at the start of the year. So he owned 27%.
So he's definitely takeoverable.
Yeah.
People could move against him very easily. So perhaps what's keeping him in there is his name. Perhaps you had a good point before when you said if they did that, there'd be a revolt in the market.
Yeah.
So, have we answered the question, or can we come to a response about the question? Can capitalism save us from itself?
Yeah. I'll say this. Any system, we could have communism, we could have socialism, we could have a fucking tribal anything. It doesn't matter what system you have. It's as good as the people that are in charge. It's as good as the people that are in these powerful positions. Now, the trouble with capitalism is it doesn't incentivize good people towards those positions.
No.
It incentivizes bad people towards those positions. So when good people get into those positions, that is an anomaly. And as such, it's a system that tends...
It feeds itself.
That tends towards basically profit maximization, powerful people acquiring more power, centralization of resources, and so on and so on.
Over social causes.
Over social causes. So capitalism tends towards feudalism. Capitalism saved the world from feudalism, but built into it is the manufacturing of future feudalism. It's just mathematically there. I don't think capitalism can save us. I do think that, there is a 1% chance that we may get enough protagonists within capitalism, people that do take a huge amount of capital and channel it towards productive causes, but this is a very, very low possibility.
Well, I just want to bring this up forward. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about that for a sec. So let me propose something, gents, and then
Yeah.
have a crack.
Propose it.
That proposal there, that idea that there's a 1% chance, if I'm quoting you correctly, you just said that we have enough people like Elon Musk, if we use him as an example and assume he is good for a minute. If we have enough of them to do this, what incentivizes them to solve the other problems? Now, let me put a bracket point on that and then feel free to respond, please.
Yeah.
So I would argue that he sees a point in the market because he sees people not liking spending money on cars and petrol and not wanting to breathe in bad air. And he sees people wanting to get out of their high power bills, and so he builds this power battery thing, this Powerwall thing, and it's fantastic and it works really well. Kudos to him, and again, I like the ideas, and open source technology is a good idea, and he released the patents, or some of them at least. There's all good things going on there in one way or another. But where is the incentive to save the oceans then? Where is the incentive to save the trees? Where's the incentive to save the whales? Where's the incentive to save the air? Because he has an incentive to sell a car. He's just find a market niche in that car. Yeah. I don't think anyone is going to think, wow, I can charge people to breathe.
Nestle's trying that.
Yeah, well. But you know what I mean? Like, so I think perhaps he's found an individual space in capitalism that has a social cause attached to it. But that doesn't mean that people like him are going to be able to solve all the problems. And I would say that even the 1% chance is not there because there's no incentive until we're at crisis each time. Like, until there's a crisis, like perhaps he's ahead of the crisis because we still have petrol on the ground and we're still making petrol-driven cars. Perhaps he's ahead of the game in this respect. That doesn't mean other people will be until we can't breathe. You know what I mean?
I disagree.
Until we have no more bees. Until we have no more.
Look, I disagree with that.
Vegetables.
I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
Look, there is a 1%. Again, we're arguing over. We essentially agree. I mean, I'm saying 99% odds of this system being due to failure, and you're saying they're 100%. So I mean, I just want to stress that we're really arguing semantics here.
Yeah.
But I will say this: given enough protagonists within the system that we have, I mean, it's manipulative, it's monopolistic. But let's take example of Bill Gates. Now, if Bill Gates' giant charity, which has hundreds of billions of dollars, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, if Bill was legitimately interested in helping humanity as best he can, if he wanted to actually get the maximum bang for his buck on his $100 billion inside his foundation, we would live in a drastically better world. I mean, over the last however many years, Bill could have put all that money into batteries and we would have made coal and gas power obsolete. Bill could have, instead of investing, taking his foundation money and buying shares in Monsanto and GlaxoSmithKline and pharmaceuticals and,
Did he do that?
He did. He does that. Instead of doing that, if he focused the same amount of money towards autonomous food production systems that would be owned, built, and given to the third world, you would have starvation significantly dented. But what he does instead is, buy 15% of the, seed-making company, 15% of the pharmaceutical company, and then vaccinate people with vaccines on which he makes a profit on another hand, and sort of help agriculture where he's creating a monopoly for a corporation that he's invested in, and so on and so on. So all I'm saying, though, is that if these philanthropists, under quotation mark, every billionaire in the world is a philanthropist. Like, that almost comes by definition. Once you have $1 billion, you're a philanthropist. You could be the greediest motherfucker ever. You just put 1% of your wealth in a PR machine that's promoting your name out there as a good person.
You've got to pay tax somewhere, so there's your other side of your
and you're
foundation.
You're a philanthropist.
Yeah.
So no. All I'm saying is if people like Bill Gates actually were trying to help the world, in an effective manner, and there were, 10 Elon Musks, yeah, we would see such a drastically different world that basically, we could take humanity to the next stage of technological and social progress, even despite of capitalism. I think it was possible with enough, enlightened protagonists even with the system as it is. I think it's extremely unlikely. I think it's a terrible damnation on the system that we see, given that there are several hundred billionaires in this world, and how much difference. If 5% of them were enlightened, we could have zero starvation. If 5% of them wanted to end starvation,
Several thousand billionaires.
Wow! Look, all it takes is about $17 billion a year to feed every starving person. That's the ultimate damnation on the richest people on this planet. Because all it would take is a small fraction of them committed to ending the worst kind of human suffering, starvation. Just a small fraction of the billionaires that are around could end it easily.
You could end it by rediverting military funds, but we aren't. So why aren't?
So
what isn't happening there, Sonny? Why isn't the state intervening with $1 trillion it spends on
all I'm saying here is
military or whatever else?
All I'm saying here is that the answer to that is these people are not socially conscious. These people do not want to solve global problems. But if a sufficient number of them did want to, that would be enough for capitalism to sort of
doesn't solve anything, though.
Well, as I said, there is a system, and then there's people within the system. Good enough people within power, even inside a very dysfunctional, bad system, can make society function. And they don't. We don't have enough of them. There's no evidence of us having any more. And as I said, I think it's doomed to failure. But I want to counter what Craig said. And I said, with enough enlightened protagonists, again, there's no sign of them anywhere, but if we had enough...
Protagonists with money.
No, but hang on a sec. So let me kind of counter your counter for a sec. So let's take the $17 billion feed every person on the planet.
Yeah.
How long is to feed them for? How are we feeding them?
$17 billion a year. 17.5 a year.
Yeah, so
that was the price of the food and the logistics to deliver the food.
Do they ever get themselves out of poverty? Do we ever help them build their own infrastructures and power systems? Or is this just us rocking up with 3 meals a day?
That's a food bill.
Yeah, so then we haven't really solved any problems there. We've just temporarily band-aided the gaping wound. Yeah. And we can do it every year. And this is where, I hate to say it, but this is where the right-wing argument comes back in and says, why am I band-aiding all the problems? The problem isn't me.
Yeah,
we have to actually get past
people, if you go on, once you go from starving to not starving, the odds of you becoming a productive member that can earn a living are drastically better.
It comes down to education too.
Oh, of course. But then we have to educate them. Education's a whole different bill to foot. And then we have a housing bill and we have an environmental bill.
I know. It's not a solution to the global problems, but we'd live in a drastically better world if nobody was starving. I'm sure you'd both agree.
Yeah, but I'm sick of hearing that argument with the GMO. With GMO crops, you're able to feed the world. That's the biggest load of horse shit I've heard in my life. Because we
weren't talking about GMO crops, Chris.
But I'm just saying we come back to same as when we had the industrial. When we had these huge combine harvesters and we were mechanising and we're growing one product on 1 million acres. Of wheat. We'll be able to feed the third world. Well, it never happened back then in the 70s either. Because it all comes down to money. Simple as that.
Yeah. Look, even if that, first of all, the claims of the GM industry have been very much disproven. But even if their claims were true, when we had drastic improvements in agricultural output, what we had was EU burning millions of metric tons of food. Every year,
yeah, same thing,
to maintain market prices, which is so unbelievable.
But very, very rational in an irrational sense.
Yeah, I had to actually.
It's rational.
The first time I heard of that, I checked the same information from 5 sources before I fully believed it. I just found
it's the irrationality of rationalism, or it's the rationalising of irrationality.
Yeah,
I can totally rationalise this. My bottom line's affected, so I need to destroy the crops. Think about for a minute. Just think about how much food a restaurant throws away in Melbourne every week. Like a busy restaurant, like a popular hipster type place, pizza place or a Thai place or whatever in the city with some name that does good wines and has some really interesting food. No, not even the food off anyone's plate that doesn't eat it. Just the waste that they waste making the food and throwing things out at the end of the night. And then multiply it by 4,000 restaurants in the CBD alone.
Wow.
And you get to this point where you go, we are throwing out a lot of food, and very few of them. There's a couple of bakeries that do this, where they allow people to come and collect the bread at the end of the day and go off and distribute it. And there's a few people. I went speed dating a couple of years ago with someone called Mad Woman, and the speed dating experience with her was you went to this kind of pseudo little factory space she'd hired in Richmond, and you repackaged all this food that she'd gotten from from companies through charity to distribute it through other charity organisations like the Brotherhood and this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you need so many of those to really be effective, to really tackle the problem, and you need so many businesses to get on board that it's not going to happen individually. France recently outlawed supermarkets throwing away food.
Excellent.
Nice.
Did anyone hear about this?
You go on. Tell us about it.
That's potentially what you need. You need someone up the top of political structures in the current system to say, actually, it's not okay to throw away food. It's not okay to throw away good food when we have starving people. So what we're going to do is we're going to make collection points. We're going to have people funded by government money or whatever, and we're going to have people go around, pick up stuff, and then drop it off to organisations who can distribute it the next day.
But what happens when that starts affecting the bottom line of those supermarkets?
Well, this is the kicker. I don't know that rationality actually plays out. So the idea there is that you wouldn't buy it if you could get it for free. The problem is that actually people don't want to work that way. That's part of the lie we've been sold. That if it's not worth anything for me to buy it, it's not worth anything, period.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think the opposite is true.
Yeah.
I think the opposite ends up being true. Like, I think we like to pay our own way. I think we like to pay for stuff if there's a value on it. And just because someone's giving it to us doesn't mean we'll stop paying for it. And if we put a caveat in place that says, hey, this food isn't just given to anyone, it's given to people who, who really need it, through charity organisations who vet their people first, it's not going to be that hard to put in place. I don't see why that would be difficult.
Why can't we follow suit? The other thing I never understood too is also with the, I know this is a bit off topic, but the whole drug thing. Why can't we follow suit there? Decriminalise it. We see it working in other countries. See it helps itself out. We see that some people want to get off the drugs they're on because they're getting the drugs for free now. They're not having to pay for it.
The economic figures in Colorado, for example, on how much the state made. So far, Colorado is scheduled to pick up over
marijuana thing. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's over $1 billion a year. Over $1 billion in state coffers. Just one state they're going to make thanks to legalizing marijuana. With those kind of bottom lines, you'll see it legalized everywhere. It'll just be like the trouble is what kind of arguments the Republicans are going to have to make for it.
Against it.
No, for it, because they'll want the money too.
No, I don't agree with that.
All right, it'd be interesting.
And sorry, the reason, let me just say, I don't agree with that is because you have a system in place right now where the government refunds the tax money spent by the states for Obamacare, and Republican governors are refusing to take it, even though it's their own tax money, because it's just not aligning with their politics.
Wow, yeah.
So you have state governors like Rick Perry, who just dropped out of the American presidential race, refused to take the Obamacare money, even though he was paying it into the federal coffers to pay for Obamacare. He was refusing to take it back again because there was an ideological principle, and his voters
supported him.
Were loving it. So it's completely irrational. It provides the money, but that goes against the argument that Republican governors will argue for it because marijuana legalization will not be something they want to argue. And Ron Paul said it when he went for president in 2012, when he went to run against Obama when he was in the primary. Yeah. He said he was the only guy on stage of the 10 guys because one of the guys pulled him up and said, "So you would legalize heroin?" And he said yes, and the whole crowd booed. And he said, "But think about what we're saying here. You're booing that because what? Because you guys are going to go out and buy heroin the next day it becomes legal? I'm not going to take heroin. You're not going to take heroin. But addicts get heroin. They get cheaper. They get treatment. We get them into structures like that. And we kill the drug war in a heartbeat."
That's it.
But that's a logical argument, and the Republicans don't argue logically. They hated him for it.
That's fine.
He went down in the polls immediately, and there was a big effect on his campaign, and it was a big moment in television in that debate when the Republicans booed.
Everybody in Facebook I remember that clip was shared like crazy. Like, would you take heroin the next day? And the whole crowd is confused, and it was like,
yeah.
And I thought that would have been a big win for him. Like, it's such a slam dunk argument.
It was a huge win with liberals. It was a huge win with, and when we say liberals, we always mean
libertarians, liberals, right?
Progressives, left-wing people. Like if you think about Ron Paul and Rand Paul, you have more people who come from the Democrat side who like those two than like anyone else on that team. because these people are anti-war and they're they oppose a drug war, whereas every other Republican's like, we got to get tougher on drugs, and it's the individual's fault and blah blah blah. So
to be honest, like
clearly
libertarians, like the Republican libertarians, is just basically you have a huge bucket of insanity. And they throw away most things that are there. They throw away prohibitions, drug wars, and I'm all on board with that. But then they just amplify all the things attached to capitalism, which become more religious than they ever were.
The extreme market doctrines,
the market,
removing government regulations,
market magic. Like any problem that you can ever discuss, pedophilia, when the government goes and the free market comes, somehow that's gonna go away. Pollution, like environment. Like I've actually heard an argument. The reason why we trash the environment is because sometimes nobody owns it.
Oh yeah, we hear that a lot. You hear that a lot. Like some people say that the way to save the earth is to put a price tag and ownership on everything. I'm like, I don't think so.
I was like thinking, you know what? If I could make like. Just trying to visualize the average fucking corporation head. Just, he owns a corporation, he fucking pollutes the environment, poisons his customers, etc. If on his land he had a river, and he had a factory, oh no, now that I own the land, I won't poison it. I would have poisoned it yesterday when I didn't own the land, but now that I own the land, I won't poison it. Like, what, like, how...
The only way that works is if you have government regulation in that mandates that you can't ruin the land just by owning it, that you have an interest in maintaining it and that's part of your role. But that's the antithesis to the argument itself, that you don't let people own everything. Why not just let the government own it and protect the interests of it with regulation and policing?
I absolutely...
like it's a bullshit argument.
We have fucking national parks. We have like... I'm not a huge fan of government as an institution, and I think we should evolve past it, and I think we should have evolved past it even by now, but quite frankly, in a capitalistic system, if you didn't have national parks, we would have wrecked that shit 50 times over by now. Like, you would not, go to Yellowstone National Park. We wouldn't have the Otways or whatever has gone in that direction. It would have been giant coal mines and factories.
It's really interesting because, like, you go back into the past and you see these conservative politicians, even like Howard, but before that you go into Fraser and all these guys, and then you go back into Reagan. They actually signed like EPA laws and clean water laws and clean air laws onto the books. They created the very legislation that the people in those parties now are rallying against. Like, there was a really interesting statement I saw that said, if Reagan ran today on his record, because they all love Reagan in the Republican Party, like we all love Howard and we all love Menzies, right? If those guys ran in those two parties today, like in Australia and in America, they could not get up as the leader. Couldn't do it because they believed in other things apart from... Like, surely there was corporate influence on them and all that stuff, but they had this kind of sacred set of things that they were doing that they're responding to their constituents. But the argument's gone so far to the right that now those arguments with these icons of the right in both countries, the conservatives in both countries, could not even get their party's nomination today, could not become the leader and could not get the nomination for president. So it's an interesting discussion around politics and how that shifted.
And I don't think people have gone right-wing at all. It's just somehow like if you can limit the debate, and this is what the media does, if you can sort of draw the borders of the debate between... look, we're going to, like in American healthcare, we're not going to have the public option. We're either going to have the government force everybody to buy a product from the insurance companies, or we're going to have the insurance companies be allowed to abuse their customers and whatever and exclude anyone and charge whatever the fuck they want. So, like, wait a second. They've actually had a debate on healthcare, which is like the most important thing as a social service. It's, I'd say more important than education. They've managed to frame the debate on healthcare on how is it that the insurance companies are going to make billions. Is it through people being forced to buy their product, or is it them being given the freedom to fuck with the customers?
Well, I saw this recently in another podcast I was watching, a guy called Secular Talk in the US, and he talked about the Overton window. It's this person that decided on this, Joseph P. Overton.
Yep.
So it's the Overton window, also known as the window of discourse. It's the range of ideas the public will accept. It's used by media pundits. The term derives from its originator. And according to Overton's description, his window includes a range of policies considered politically acceptable in the current climate of public opinion, which politicians can recommend without being considered too extreme to gain public office. So the idea is that there's a range of acceptable debate if you're a political pundit and you're a politician. If you go outside of that, you're too extreme, you're too left, you're a greenie in
too
here.
Right,
yeah.
You're a Nazi or a greenie, basically.
Or a commie, or you're
but as soon as you join the Green Party in this country, you're almost Nazi.
You're a commie,
left wing commie.
That's it. That's
straight
it.
away.
That's how they
without
label
even
you.
doing anything else, without even looking into it. I mean, my neighbour must have read what the back in the 80s when the Greens were trying to stand for politics and marijuana, legalised drugs, all the rest of it. And he still holds those things today. He hasn't moved forward to see what they're actually about today, because back then he actually looked at the Herald Sun, which tells you all the truths, and they said, they were, they wanted to legalise marijuana, they wanted to close up the state forest, they wanted to do all that. They're just going to kill this country, and that's what he believes today. It's incredible.
We're at 61. We're on 61 minutes.
We're just over an hour before 6 o'clock. You want to finish at 6?
You keen to go?
No. Just we can.
We
an
go
hour,
up to,
hour and a half.
We've never gone past an hour and a half, so that's going to be the hard limit. And I'd say we start wrapping it up. Maybe we ask, one final question that's probably worth discussing.
Well, before we go into the next question, let's kind of wrap up the other two questions. So, can capitalism save itself via its own mechanisms? Do we agree that's a no or a yes?
No.
Most probably not.
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say most probably not.
Okay. Can the free market and private ownership fix things like social problems?
No.
Okay,
that's a definitive no.
They're charities.
Yeah.
And charity doesn't fix it either.
Look, only individuals...
No, but they see them as charities. It's a charitable thing.
See, this notion of every human being following their rational self-interest and that leading the world to being a better place is completely false. It's banal bullshit. The only way that you could have a good world in capitalism is precisely if the opposite happens. People would not follow their rational self-interest of maximizing their wealth. They would act irrationally for the benefit of the whole, and so the only way that happens is if people behave the opposite way to what they're meant to, and you know what I mean?
Totally.
There's a paradox within it that's just...
So let's talk for a minute about transition then, because we've heard this bandied around a bit, and I saw something today I want to discuss, but let's talk about how that happens. So let's assume that if you're listening to the podcast that you've seen the Zeitgeist movies, particularly moving forward, that you're involved in the movement in some way, or at least keen to learn about it. If you haven't watched them, go watch it. It's on YouTube. It's free, but it's open source or open share or whatever, open license. So how do we think that the transition happens? Because I saw Joseph talk about it today in a 2013 interview with an English guy, and I think that's probably worth bringing up. Peter Joseph, that is. So what do we think, Sonny and Chris?
I think we're always in transition. I think we have a goal. I think we know where we want to be. But transition can be anything. I mean, you can't... It's like saying, before World War II, this is how we're going to finish up. This is how what's going to happen. We're not going to have famine, or we're going to... some major parts of the world are going to go into famine, and there's going to be issues here and there. You can't predict what's going to happen in transition. But we're already in transition. Because I think we're getting more and more people today that are starting to question, what capitalism is, and where it fits in their life, as in what context is how it's not helping them or it's helping them, or like feudalism, you've only the friends of friends, top down. Yeah. It's only benefiting them and not benefiting anyone on the bottom. Not benefiting the working class. So I think it's being questioned all the time, and I think we're in transition, and we're gaining steam, because I've never seen in my lifetime so many people questioning the system that they live in.
Well, I'd probably agree with that, because we're seeing a lot more protests. We're obviously seeing a lot more political transitions. We're seeing a lot more extreme voting patterns. So we look at Let's reel a few off. If we look at Greece, Canada, even Australia with the Greens gaining more power. In the US, you've got a Democratic Socialist running for president, potentially who might beat Clinton, or at least a lot of us hope he does. You've got people in the UK voting for more right or more left politicians. So the Overton window is changing because people are accepting more of these ideas. I saw a survey recently that talked about the idea that Bernie Sanders is a socialist and who would vote for him. And they had these kind of... The survey was, would you vote for a gay person? Would you vote for a woman? Would you vote for this? Would you vote for that? Would you vote for a socialist? And so socialist was lacking behind gay, Muslim and woman, which is 78%, 47%. But that's still almost half of the American population that would now vote for a socialist. You think about that stat in the 80s?
0.
You're talking about potentially single digits. So clearly there's a shift in the idea that we're all thinking not about ourselves anymore. We're thinking about how to fix the planet. Perhaps the marketing and the New World Order has triumphed and we're all brainwashed greenie lefties who are screaming for UN rule. Yeah. I don't know, but there's clearly a shift happening.
Craig, I think the best point of the podcast is something you just brought up. Like, the Overton window is breaking. I would say, there's no way in a trillion years I'd vote for a right-wing party. I don't like any aspect of right-wing parties, but I think that having a genuine right-wing in a parliament and having a genuine left-wing socialist in a parliament, if you had that full spectrum that expands the debate, then perhaps for the first time in the media, people with ideas that can change the system, the world for the better, will be capable of putting them across, being listened to. Because for way too long we've kind of had this democratic centrist politics where you have a few think tanks around the world write policy, and then the same bunch of guys write the left-wing version, the right-wing version. You basically had a very, very, very stable, corporately run status quo where the left and the right were just slight incremental changes in policy with the same ideas in power and the same members of the same oligarchy in power. I think, the world getting more left-wing and more right-wing, sort of more stretched out in the political spectrum, is a great opportunity, for people like us, people with ideas.
Because you're going to see clashes.
Because, somebody might actually put to the test if socialism actually works. If the purest possible version of capitalism works. I think experimentation is the best way forward, and I don't think we've had any. We've had this kind of...
mulling along of consensus.
We've had... Yeah, we've had an
consensus
artificial consensus imposed globally from the same narrow group of people who have fucking wrecked the world. And quite frankly, if we had a pure communist country that was run that way and a pure capitalist country that was run that way, because we were allowed wider limits of debate, somewhere along the lines we would have learned some crucial lessons about, how systems function. We haven't. We've basically been running the exact same hybrid system with two parties spouting propaganda that sounds very different, effectively doing the same thing.
Yeah, but it's both capitalism with they're both capitalism with welfare or social
essentially
tendencies.
We've only had capitalism
a
with
safety
some
net
welfare.
that saves people from the ills of the biggest ills of capitalism that is even now under threat.
So that we've only had one system in the Western world, and I think that's definitely not the way to go. I would say, I think all our preferences would be sort of a more egalitarian system, a more perhaps socialistic, perhaps egalitarian by other means.
Feminist.
But we'd all want a more egalitarian system. Some people may want something opposite of that, but my biggest hope is that the range of the debate is expanded, that we actually try things like putting bankers in jail, we actually try things like massive investment from the government side into technologies that have an impact on the world. I would bring some examples, perhaps battery technology, perhaps environmentally cleaning technology, perhaps something that's going to digest the millions of tons of plastics that are forming islands in the Atlantic Ocean. Sorry, it's the Pacific Ocean, actually, of the western coast of the United States. So, yeah, the Overton window is breaking. That is, if you don't know what an Overton window is, I didn't 15 minutes ago either. It's something you should.
Worth a Google.
It's definitely worth.
It's worth a Google. You should Googleize that.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. So let's talk about getting back to the question then. Transition. Does it come through these left-leaning or further left parties? So, Mr. Joseph, again, the interview was done a couple of years ago. I haven't got the exact date on it, but he was talking with this guy from some sort of lean podcast in the UK about Occupy London, who also apparently interviewed Jacques Fresco. And he talks with Peter for a while, and he's, let's talk about transition. And he actually said that Peter had more of a transition plan than Fresco did, which is interesting. But he actually said we need something like a universal income. Yeah. Minimum wage that everyone gets. It's not a minimum wage in terms of
minimum income that everyone gets.
Yeah, it's like a universal minimum income that if you're working or not, you get.
So let's say it's $40,000, and if your wages are $30,000, you get an extra 10 from the government. If your wages are $0, you get 40. If your wages are 60, you get nothing. But it just, in a sense, an assurance that every single person in the country gets a certain amount of money at minimum every single year.
Now, how do you pay for that? So he says it's straight social style redistribution. You increase taxes on the extremely wealthy. Like a financial transactions tax would be a good way to do it. There's many ways to fund it properly. But what would it do to the market? What would happen to the market for things like food, clothing, shelter, cars? If someone had a 40 grand income and could afford to get a loan, what would happen to the market? What would happen to the prices of those goods?
There'd be inflation.
If that's where we think transition comes from, what happens? Now, I don't agree with that. I don't think there would be inflation. But please tell me why.
I'd have to think about it, because it's not a simple question, because you'd have to really sit down and look at it.
No, because I agree with that. But I would say there'd be no inflation, or there would only be inflation if the value of the international currency, or the national currency, was locked on the international market. See, I don't necessarily buy into this idea that you print more money and you create inflation. Because if that was the case, America, through its quantitative easing program in the last 6 years...
Yeah, look, if you print more money and just lock it up in a safe, you don't create inflation, because money needs to be circulating to be inflated.
No, but the funny thing is it's still circulating.
But you don't know how much is out there. I mean, I don't even think they know how much is out there.
But they were printing and giving, billions, like $55 billion a month.
Yeah, but is
to the banks.
but wait a minute, is someone sitting there, seriously sitting there, on a piece of paper and go, right, this country's printed or manufactured this much money. This country has manufactured this much money. Therefore, the exchange rate between these two countries should be this much. Their dollar should be here. It doesn't work like that.
No, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't work like that. So what gives the value of the currency when you print more of it? And the kicker is it's the international market that has confidence in in that body to deal with the fact they're printing more money. So the only thing that gave Americans the ability to do that, to print a lot more money, was because people trusted in the fact that America could do this and get away with it, because there wasn't going to be a big problem. And so no one rushed out of the American economy and sold all their dollars to create lots more money and to create inflation. No one did that. So there's no particular exchange rate. You're right. There's no particular someone working out a budget sheet and going, well, this is worth this much. It's all based on international money markets and the idea that the confidence in that to happen is what that's all about. When people lose confidence in the system, in the money, that's when it crashes. If the confidence is maintained, and no matter how much you print, it won't matter. And the quintessential example is Zimbabwe. Like, people talk, the right wing talks about Zimbabwe, as an example that you can't print more money, because if that was the case, Zimbabwe would be the richest country in the world. It's like, yeah, but that's not what it's about. It's not about what you print or how much you print on the note itself. It's about how much confidence the international market has in your country's currency. That's what it's about. It's nothing to do with these equations.
I totally understand that, but if you go back to Zimbabwe, let's say 1972, right? And the biggest note they had was $1,000, right? And don't ask me what you could buy with $1,000 Zimbabwe's, But I think in the end of 2000, it was like a $1 trillion note or a $1 billion note. I mean, so if you were saving money back in the 80s or the 70s, you fucking couldn't buy a can of eggs with their new $1 billion note. So I mean, where's the confidence there? I mean, they practically went back to the American dollars. There again, they've gone, oh, fuck this. Our monetary system here is just a mess. You know, we don't know how much money's in circulation. We don't know what it's worth. Argentina went through the same thing when they had their economic crash, and they had to try and stabilise the currency. And everyone seems to fall back to the US dollars for some crazy reason.
But for the exact same reason I said. That's the point.
I understand. It's a confidence thing.
It's a confidence thing. Like
well,
when you have no currency anymore, you go back to where there's confidence. You go back to the
and
American dollar and you go, well, let's import American dollars.
If Euro wasn't in a simultaneous crisis, then I mean, this is why America has done so much to destabilize Greece, because, quite frankly, they could not afford a very stable euro at a time that they were printing trillions of dollars. Because if there was a very stable euro, then people with billions of US dollars have somewhere to go with those billions of US dollars. If you go to like a Swiss franc, you're going to basically overvalue. You know what I mean? The price of the Swiss franc is going to increase so much so quickly that you can't take $1 trillion US and buy Swiss francs. It doesn't
work that way.
It doesn't work that way. It can't accommodate that much volume. You can only buy euros. That's the only major currency that can absorb all that wealth from the United States. And they had to make sure that euro was unstable and weak while that shit was going on. Otherwise, they could have actually destroyed their economy.
Well, this is... Alright, so if I accept those premises and we talk about the confidence and the monetary dynamics of being able to shift money around doesn't work, well, those things that you talked about, which is very valid, how do we then implement something like a universal income? So what do we do if... Peter's right on the interview I saw in 2013. How do you do that? How do you pay for it?
I have an answer. You have to start at a city basis, and then a state basis, and then perhaps a nation basis. I mean, you know.
What do you start with, though? What do you mean start?
Well, if you look at the history of minimum income, there have been several councils and several cities that have implemented minimum income schemes, and some of them are going through at the moment. So minimum income history, and it was trialed successfully in quite a few cities.
Well, I think it's an interesting idea, and I think the question I asked before was how does it affect the market? So what happens to prices in those countries or those areas or states or nations when they implement a minimum income? What happens to things like food and goods and all this kind of stuff?
The Social Credit Party, there was a party in Canada that was doing this.
Yep.
It was done in short-lived effervescence in the United States in the 1960s. I'm trying to find the cities, but there's basicincome.org. It's a fantastic website that's giving you like a history of intellectual ideas and where they came from and the debates that have been had and the parties that have previously run on this platform. But there was modest but real. There was in the Alaska dividends. Republican governor of the state of Alaska was concerned with the huge wealth generated by the mining in Prudhoe Bay, the largest oil field in North America. He suggested setting up a fund to ensure that this wealth would be preserved through investment in the revenue. Alaska Permanent Fund was created, and in order to get the population interested, this guy conceived of an annual payment to dividend-stole residents, proportional to the number, and...
Well, I suppose if you gave it to everyone at the end of the year, they could alter some prices on stuff for sure.
No, but you have to dole it out like a regular payment.
That's right.
Like you wouldn't just give everyone $40,000 at the end of the year. You'd have to dole it out like a regular payment. And don't forget, we also had our inflationary potential during the Rudd bonus, which didn't happen either. Sorry.
People in Alaska for over a decade received between an average $2,000 a year.
But that's not really a good minimum income, is it?
No, it's not a minimum income, but it was
like a welfare payment in an Oz study, really.
That's
what Oz study.
It's less than Oz study.
Less than Oz study. It's not a good minimum income then.
So no, it's a pretty terrible minimum income. But it was simply that, like, a guy said,
"What year was this? This is
1950." No, it's from the 70s. They're extracting like billions of dollars from this oil field we just found. Like, let's just take a small portion of it and hand it out to the people, and I want to tax it, and I want to get the people behind me by giving them a percentage, and that's what happened. So, and it was a Republican governor. Good on him.
You probably got paid a lot to manage that fund.
Yeah, but we need our...
I'm ready to wrap up.
That's cool. All right. Well, I say we call it a day at this point. We have indeed tackled from many angles the question of whether capitalism can save us. The transition into alternative system and the eventual fall of capitalism is something we're definitely going to discuss in a future podcast, and I'd say it should be the three of us. That'll be the next topic. We shall do more research. I shall have more time to do more research, that's for sure. And we keep it interesting. We'll see you next Sunday at 4:30. We may change the time in the future to a Thursday. But Zeitgeist Melbourne Radio will be with you every single week for the foreseeable future. So much for today. Take care, y'all.
Bye.
When Elon Musk, they hire people to maximize profits. And you don't maximize profits by making cars that don't break down. You don't maximize profits by, providing, offering more services for less money, because you basically maximize profits by getting the people to spend the most amount of money.
But maybe he's brand building.
That is a valid concern. I don't know. Craig, what do you think?
Well, I've got to ask a question there. So let's have a think about what you said. I think, well, we're looking at him as this outlier in a field of people in dark rooms making lots of money and smoking cigars. He's the outlier in this. In your idea, if I've heard that. So he's got a social conscience and he wants to make money by solving the world's problems. I think that's based on potentially false assumptions. The first false assumption being that he's enlightened. He probably is, and he sees the point, and maybe it's a marketing scheme, but he's a self-interested dude. He's trying to make money, and where he's potentially being different is he's realised that there is a market out there for enlightened ideas like electric cars and like getting off the grid, because people right now are feeling the pinch of petrol, people are feeling the pinch of petrol bills, people are feeling the pinch of increasing bills at home, a couple hundred per month, 400 or 500 per month. So they're going, how do I do this? How do I get out of this system? So he's designed a system which allows you to do that in a really unique way.
So are you basically saying that he's an entrepreneur who's realized there's a market for enlightened ideas, and I'm going to fill that market for enlightened ideas and charge a premium for my product because it comes attached with enlightened ideas? I mean, is that what you think, or is that the idea, the possibility you're floating?
The possibility. I don't know. I'll reserve my judgment till the end of the conversation. But the premise here is that potentially he's not that different. He's just seen a new market. Now, whether or not, the question becomes is why wasn't the market seen before? Again, we had the EV1 in 1998 that had a faster pickup than a Porsche. It was great. Holden rolled it out. They leased it and pulled it back. There's a good doco called Who Killed the Electric Car? And it's worth watching, I think, because there was obviously other interests involved. The problem, potentially, Elon's going to have is that, and my guess is, because he's a smart dude, he's thought about this anyway. After releasing the patents, there's nothing stopping a Chinese company from producing his car a lot cheaper and then selling it. So why isn't that happening? Why aren't we seeing that? I don't think the Chinese have a problem rolling out mass production very quickly and changing production lines to suit. So is it too soon for that to come about? Has he got some
question.
sort of...
I can speculate.
No.
Has he got some sort of lock
I
on?
can jump in there because
Please.
I think the only patents that he's released is not on the car itself.
No, all of them are on the car. He's released all the car related patents.
I think 90% of it's on the battery technology because he wants to push the battery technology forward.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone can build a car. There's no issues there. It's the technology in the batteries is what
That's what's legitimately new. Yes. Because the car, look, the electric motor, you have it in every washing machine. You know, like by the weight of the motor compared to the output of power, they are a lot more powerful than petrol engines and a lot more efficient. So there's not the only novel thing about a Tesla really is the battery. There's a lot of kind of side innovation. Ooh, yeah, the door is open and the car's got sensors and it can self-navigate and da-da-da-da-da. But the thing that makes a difference is the batteries. And I think he's released it for several reasons. One of which is, in a way, it protects his company. Because, you know, once the technology is out there, there's no point suppressing Tesla or making Tesla crash. When the very next thing coming down the road is a Chinese knockoff, and you know, once the genie's out of the bottle, it's out of the bottle. You know, technology has been historically suppressed, and you know, you already know in this case that we're way past the point where that can happen.
Well, it's important to note that Nissan have the Leaf and Holden have the Volt, and I've seen them driving. So they've already got 2 mass production car companies doing electric cars.
I would also say the margin on these cars is relatively thin. And he knows that...
is it?
Yeah.
Why is that? Because the battery's so expensive? Or
yeah, look, I mean, you can think about... I would say, yeah, for the most part, it is because the batteries are so expensive. The batteries are the thing that make these cars...
Do you actually know that?
Yes. The batteries themselves use a fortune in terms of rare metals. And there's a... Tesla recycle all their batteries, and so there's an argument to be made that they use rare resources and they're not necessarily sustainable, but then again they recycle virtually 100% of those.
That was the next question. Where is he getting the resources from, and is that sustainable? Can everyone, even with current recycling technology and in recycling 100%, can everyone have an electric car?
That's fantastic. Look, there is... I'm going to Google that while we discuss other things, but I know for a fact that yes, batteries and funnily enough, touchscreens are 2 things that we're using a fuck ton of in the world we have today, and generally not recycling, that come from expensive and resource limited materials. So I'll tell you which they're both called rare earth metals, and I can Google and specifically tell you which ones.
Because it's quite fascinating. Because if you think about what that means that there's only a limited lifespan for this market A, and for the idea that this can save the world. That idea only has a certain amount of credence if he derives the metal from somewhere, and he's not taking new metal out of the ground. But if that's the case, then he's limited to the current amount of metals in circulation, so those metals will become more and more precious as he has less access to them, thereby driving the price high potentially of the product.
Yeah, but also he's working on one type of battery technology and chemistry where we've seen in the last couple of years that there's a lot of organisations like JPL and MIT that are working on battery technologies that use the soil in your backyard, taking the most abundant resource and using that to a point where we're trying to get the same efficiencies out of it, and then once its end life comes in, it's non-toxic, goes back into the earth. We have that with a saltwater battery right now, which can power a house, same thing, and it has a rating of 6. In other words, when it's finished in the end of its lifespan, it can practically be chopped up. You can almost drink it. It's non-toxic whatsoever. So there are plenty of other people moving forward with technology that to use metals and minerals that are abundant.
Well, that's interesting in itself. I mean, the way I could see it working, but obviously this is from a non-engineering technical point of view. Has anyone heard about the solar-powered roads?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked into...
Can we talk about that? Is that...
Yeah, I've looked into solar roads quite a bit, and it's a fantastic concept. I shared it on my Facebook happily.
But the price?
But the numbers on them don't crunch. I mean, it's similar to the numbers in the Tesla Powerwall. Powerwall is at least like... Given the lifetime of the batteries and the guarantees on Tesla in a country like Australia, where power is expensive, You will pay it back in about 10 years. In most countries, there's no point buying it, so it's not even economically viable. Solar roads are way worse than the Tesla Powerwalls. Tesla Powerwall is basically a concept that I think should be in every single house in 10 years. As the technology improves, as it gets cheaper, it's going to be viable. I think Tesla Powerwall can change the world. It's not there yet.
Do we feed it off like solar panels?
It's just a giant battery. That's all.
It's a giant battery that feeds off solar panels on the roof.
Yeah, but it's plug and play. It's not. Yeah. It's not complicated. It's up on the wall. You plug it into your existing home setup network, and away it goes.
Which is the benefit of it. It's adaptable to the current structures.
Yeah. So the trouble with the solar roads is that the price that they cost, from just in economic terms, the price that they cost and the amount of power that they produce for the price that you pay for the solar roads, they're just not economically viable.
Well, not when you pour in bitumen, which is a byproduct of the oil industry. So, well, I mean, we pour bitumen now on our roads, and that's the cheapest form of...
Yes, we're on air!
How you doing, Zeitgeisters? This is Craig, Chris, and Sonny. And we're here today to do episode 6 of the TZM podcast. We're going to talk today about capitalism and can it save us? Is there a way or a mechanism inside capitalism or inside the structures that capitalism propagates to actually get us out of the potentially impending social and economic and environmental crises? We're going to use a case study. We're going to look at, or theoretically, we're going to look at Tesla Motors and the Tesla power battery. We're going to try and discuss things from that point of view philosophically and see if we can come to some sort of conclusion about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. A lot of people obviously are hailing Elon Musk and Tesla as this amazing company who's doing electric cars, he's doing get you off the grid power at home, the power walls, lots of cool stuff. But what's really happening here? Is it just another marketing ploy? Is it going to end up eating itself as well? We'll go from there. I'll launch in with Chris.
Well, I'm just going to say no. And that's it. See you all next week. No. No, I think what Tesla's doing is a great thing, but I think it's a tip of the iceberg. I think it's a bit of a marketing thing, because at the end of the day, he's there to sell a product, he's there to make a profit, but his intentions are good when he released his patents to the general public, because that's going to push battery technology forward. Because the biggest thing that's held back electric cars over the 100 so years has been the batteries, and through mobile phones, be getting big, working harder, requiring more power, and to last longer. I think the battery technology is being pushed to its limits in that way, and same as with the tablets and the rest of it. And I think he's picked up on that technology and he's moved it forward into his cars.
I'm kind of busy here trying to post all of this stuff on the social media, but first of all, I'd say there is a set of rules for capitalism by which money gets invested. And the set of rules is that money searches the highest rate of return, and the highest rate of return is tied in by the definition of corporation, which is to maximize profit. Meaning that if there are two factories, two entrepreneurs, one wanting to make his product in China, using the lowest possible margins, making it more quickly, he's more likely to attract money and investors than some guy trying to do it in Detroit, because he'd have to pay, a lot more to his workers and so on and so on.
Not just wages, but environmental, like as in dumping his waste products.
So what's kind of unique with Tesla and Elon Musk is that, he's entering a market that you make a car and they have something like 5-year bumper-to-bumper warranty, meaning that anything ever goes wrong for whatever reason, it's not limited in any sense, they repair it for free, and 8 years drivetrain and battery warranty. So this is sort of unprecedented in the auto industry. The car is virtually good for life. They recharge those cars for free. It's a terrible business model if you're making money. And how does Tesla do it? Well, first of all, the part that's missing from the equation, and why there's only one Elon Musk, is that Elon Musk made about $500 million in cash from PayPal and the previous 4 companies he's had. So nobody, by the rule of it, will invest in a company that manufactures, in a Western country, a product which is not optimized to make money. It had to be this very charming, genius, charismatic character putting in all of his life, save like his entire net worth, into 2 companies at the time, later 3, Tesla, SpaceX, and Solar City. So it had to be somebody literally risking everything they've ever earned, $500 million plus, in enlightened projects for some more venture capital money to find its way into those projects. And generally speaking, the market that's searching for things to invest in is very rarely, if ever, finding the target like Tesla, for example. And as such, it's an exception. It's a very much an exception to the rule. And I'd say, if the average multi-billionaire, wanted to tackle major global problems like Elon Musk did, hey, we're stagnating in the whole notion of going to outer space. NASA's hardly made any progress in 20 years. I want to get into the business of launching stuff into space cheaper than NASA can do it. Electric cars. Oh my God, we had the EV3. Like, why has there been virtually no progress for 10, 15 years? This could change the world. This could save the world. I want to be the guy that does it. Like, very few of the people that aren't, entrepreneurs and billionaires are going down these avenues. And quite frankly, if Elon Musk, if the kind of culture where you have venture capitalists funding entrepreneurs and a kind of culture where you have companies, major corporations hiring CEOs, if that culture had an interest in hiring people, that have some integrity and some stake in benefiting the world, sure, capitalism could save us. But that's not who they hire. That's why there's only